Yes, indeed. We are back right here on the radio, getting ready for the second hour of Voices of Lake County. I am your host, Olga Martin Steele. You can reach us today in the first half of the hour at 916-849-8170 with a text. So I'll take your texts for the first half hour at 916-849-8170. We will open up the lines for calls in the second half of the show. It is a great pleasure today to have with me on air, live, right here in the studio. And today is June the 13th. If you're listening on June the 13th, you are listening to a live broadcast. Any other day, you would be listening to a replay. Angela DePalma Dow. Good morning, Angela.
Good morning. I'm so excited to be here on a Friday the 13th.
I know. You know, how do you feel about Friday the 13th?
I love Friday the 13th. It's something cool, kitschy, it's unique. And I mean, if you go outside today, it doesn't feel like a Friday the 13th, right?
No, but it's an easy date to remember,
it
right?
Is, yeah.
And when was I on KPFZ 88.1 FM? Where was I on Friday the 13th? There you go. So for those of you that I think many of our listeners know Angela DePalma Dow, she is regularly on Betsy Cotton's show, which is, do you remember is it 2 o'clock?
It's Sundays. And it's the 3 o'clock hour that I'm usually on, which is the What's Next. So I talk about the Lake Report
because
once
Betsy
a month.
has a 2-hour program on Sundays.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And usually it's the last Sunday of the month that I have the water report.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, she's kind of a regular here on KPFZ, but we were talking before the show started that wondering, had she been on one of my programs live? We decided no, but she has called in. So she's not a stranger to me. Now, those of you who know me know I follow the county activities closely. And I have a show called The Parallax View, where we take different views of what's going on in this county and other places. That's on Wednesdays. But today is my 2-hour Voices of Lake County day. And Angela is a voice in Lake County. She's got an amazing background. She has much to offer the community. She's worked in natural resources for 20 years or so?
Yeah, natural resources about 20 years, and then with water-specific programs about 16 years.
All right, that's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot of
time.
Good experience. And then, of course, you are also educated in natural resources. So how about we just take a few minutes to have you kind of self-introduce. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Where'd you come from? Why are you here? Why do you do what you do? Why do you love Lake County?
Yeah, justify why I actually know what I'm talking about sometimes. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be able to connect to the community and talk about one of my favorite things, which is water and Clear Lake and Lake County. And I am a Lake County transplant, moved here in 2018. I have a bachelor's in science, biological science, and a minor in chemistry from Sac State. So I'm Sac State alumni. And then I went to Michigan State for my master's, which I have a master's degree in science and fisheries and wildlife with an emphasis in limnology. And limnology is the study of freshwater. So lakes,
freshwater
ponds,
lakes, right?
Freshwater lakes, yeah. Which you go to Michigan, that's the best place to learn about lakes because they have more lakes than Minnesota, actually.
Yeah, that's really true. Let me ask you this. While you were in Michigan, did you work on quagga mussel or mussel issues?
Yeah, so I worked with invasive species programs out in Michigan. Mm-hmm. Michigan has a lot of invasive species programs because they're surrounded by 4 out of 5 Great Lakes. And a lot of the invasive species, especially aquatic invasive species that have come into the United States, the pathway was the Great Lakes through the Laurentian Channel. So I worked with invasive species programs, mostly with aquatic plants. So I worked for about 6 years with a citizen or community science program that was throughout the state of Michigan, where I went out and helped folks do detections for invasive plants on their lakes. Like everybody in Michigan has a second home that's on a lake somewhere. And so they really are interested in keeping their lake healthy and safe. And so I go out and help them learn how to detect invasive species. There's a lot of lakes that have mussels already. All the Great Lakes have mussels. So it's something that, the majority of lakes out there kind of have them, and they are actually one of the pathways for mussels getting through the rest of the United States. So
yes. All right.
Yes.
She knows what she's talking about.
Yeah.
So that's your background, a little bit about your background. Now, what brought you to Lake County, and how long have you been here? You were with the County of Lake for a while, so talk a little bit about your entry to Lake County.
Yeah. Well, growing up in Northern California, even though I left, I always wanted to come back. So after I was in Michigan, I got a job actually in Southern California at another land trust. And then when the job position opened here, working on Clear Lake for the County of Lake and the Water Resource Department, I jumped on it. It was like, if you're a lake biologist and you love lakes and there's an opportunity to work on Clear Lake, you really want it, because that's one of the sentinel lakes, that can provide a lot of information and just interest. So that was how I got up here. And then I moved here in 2018, right before the Mendocino complex. And I just come from Southern California, where they just had the Tubbs fire, and they had devastating debris flows. And so I was here a few months and looking at the fire over the ridges at the river fire and the ranch fire. And it was pretty concerning, because I was like, look at those steep slopes, and if there's any debris flows into Clear Lake. And I was really motivated and started working with the water board and the current staff that was at Water Resources, and we developed a post-fire monitoring program and a watershed assessment program with the water board, which they still utilize at all of their post-fire water quality monitoring throughout the state of California. And so it was something that, with being only here a couple months, being able to really get my hands and jump in. Yeah. And we were able to publish a paper from some of the data that we studied from the post ranch and river fire water quality monitoring. And that's in the Journal of Ecosphere. And it's called Turning Up the Heat, looking at climate and wildfire impacts on hyper-eutrophic lake.
So where is that found again?
It's in the journal called Ecosphere. And it was published in 2020. And if you just type in Ecosphere, Turning Up the Heat, you'll find it. It's also posted on the Water Resources, or County Lake Water Resources website under the Clear Lake Water Quality tab.
So we can go right to our own website here in the county and find it. Oh, that will be interesting, and I'm sure maybe we can repeat that at the end. People will be interested in taking a look at that. So you got here in the midst of the Mendocino Complex fire. Now, during that fire, of course, much of Lakeport was evacuated. Well, just about every community around the lake was evacuated.
Pretty much, yeah. It's like Lower Lake, I think, and Clear Lake, everybody was seeking refuge there.
And didn't get over into Middletown, those areas. But the entire District 3, which is the north and the North Shore District, I call it, was evacuated. For quite a while, actually. So that was a big one. And here you were, not a newbie. Well, maybe, were you a newbie to fires at that point?
Yes, I had not worked with any fires and water issues until I came here.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But I will say that the research that we've done on Clear Lake is very unique, because Clear Lake is a large natural lake that's very old. And impacts on fire for Clear Lake are very, very different than the fire impacts on basically every other type of lake that's been studied in the United States. Most of the lakes that have been studied for fire are in forested areas, boreal, or they're like reservoirs, so they're young. And Clear Lake being so big and so old and shallow, the impacts of fire on Clear Lake are very different. In fact, there's not that many impacts directly after fire on Clear Lake, because there's already so many nutrients and stuff in the lake.
It's such a nutrient-rich lake.
Right. So it was a very novel kind of study and a little different. Yeah.
Okay. So you recently transitioned from working for the county to working for the land trust. Now, truth in advertising, I guess. I'm not here to advertise for the land trust, but I do belong to the land trust, and we support the land trust in lots of different ways that we can. Talk about your transition from the county to the land trust, and then let's jump on the land trust, because it's such an important organization that does such important work, And you mentioned that early on you worked for a land trust. So this is maybe coming home a little bit for you. But talk about what you might want to say about that.
Yeah, thanks. I really want to acknowledge that the land trust is made up of dedicated individuals that have been working for the last 30 years. So if I say anything like, oh, we about the land trust, I don't mean me. I've only been working for 2 months at the land trust. I'm hoping to grow and be there a long time and develop into the we. But anytime I say we, I'm acknowledging that it's the folks that are there previous. Nice. And most of them are volunteers and board members.
Yep.
So yeah. And contributors like yourself too. So thank you.
Roberta Lyons, of course, is a big name, has always been a big name with the Lake County Land Trust. And she's been on radio several times with us, but we have not had anybody, or I have not had anybody from the Land Trust on air for a long, long time.
We're breaking that record today.
So we're going to take care of that now.
And I'll come back.
It's time to really... There's so much to talk about, and, there's so many challenges politically and otherwise that we're facing right now. But the Land Trust lives on, keeps on keeping on. So I wanted to talk about some of the positive stuff that's happening here in Lake County, and Land Trust is a big part of that. So good choice on jobs, I might just say as a personal thought, But
yeah, thank you. There is an opportunity for a leadership position at the Land Trust, and they don't, they haven't had a full-time executive director, I believe, ever. They've had some part-time executive directors, but they happen to get a grant that supports a full-time executive director, and they have several other grants now that requires executive director management. So it was really kind of kismet that I was at the county. I was looking for more leadership position, and then this opportunity showed up, and there was a door that opened, and I'm a woman of science, so I put science on a pedestal. I believe in science, but sometimes there's things that we, can't explain, or fate or whatever. And I think the opportunity for being able to move to the Land Trust was that exemplified. So,
so you're not going to say the stars exactly lined up?
Yeah, I'm not going to say. Maybe somewhere, I don't know. I wasn't looking at the stars, but for the opportunity for me, I think I've done enough what I could do at the county, and there wasn't any other upward opportunities available. And here was one that was open and right in front of me with a great organization. And like you said, very positive. Yeah. Everybody there, they loves what they do. There's a great group of board members and supporters, and it's very positive. Everybody loves what the Land Trust has accomplished. They're excited to move the Land Trust forward and grow and do more of what the Land Trust does, even in this challenging, uncertain kind of climate that we have.
Everybody's affected financially, potentially financially.
Yeah.
With grants, it's always going to be that way depending on where they come from. Okay. Yeah. Tell the audience, what is the Land Trust? What is it? What is their mission? For those that may not know much about this wonderful organization, let's let the listeners know what the Land Trust is.
Great. So the Land Trust is a nonprofit organization. It's been around since 1993. So we're almost going on, 33 years here, 32 years. And it's the goals of the organization. The mission is to work to conserve, restore land and water resources of important environmental, scenic, cultural, and historic value on behalf of present and future generations. So we need to protect our wildlands and wild waters to be enjoyed by current and future generations. And we do that through our vision, which is preserving natural resources. We utilize education, cooperation, restoration, and conservation.
One of the things I think that is helpful to know about the Land Trust is and maybe I'm going to use a term that is just familiar to me. It may not be accurate. You can always correct me if I'm wrong. But they do support the wise use of resources. So they're not an organization that buys lands and then locks it up and nobody can actually use it for educational reasons, for appreciation, there's so many great things that come from walking, in nature. So that's still the case with the Land Trust, right?
Yeah, and our mission has, recreation value and cultural value in there. So, one of the main ways that the land trust can protect these wild lands and wild water environments is through direct acquisition. So purchasing of properties from private property owners. We also have properties that have been donated, by folks that want to see that land protected and not developed or not used for other activities. And in that sense, we have an obligation to, we're not a public agency, but we have an obligation for that land to be used. So we can learn from it through education. But also, how do we gain more land to protect? And we can do that through like outreach and education. So especially, getting folks out to see different parts of the county that have been owned in private property for so long. We get to explore new places and new facets of the community, the environmental community.
Right.
And we recently the mission has to include cultural use, and so we have several grants, and we have a priority to engage more with tribal partners, and we have a goal so that when we purchase lands or we're managing lands, that territorial tribes, regional tribes have access to that land to use for their cultural use. So whether that's gathering important seeds or plants, whether that's conducting ceremony, if there's lands there that the public can use, tribes should be able to get back to the lands that they were able to use historically for their cultural use. And that's a priority now through the Land Trust.
Okay. So let's talk about some of the projects then, because there is one fairly recent project. Maybe start with the recent project where the partnership and the cultural aspects of it with natives is kind of front and center. So talk about that project. What's it called? Where is it? And what's going on?
Yeah, this is a great project. And I read the mission, or I recited the vision earlier, and the word restoration is now in the vision. So the board and the Land Trust have prioritized restoration of wild lands and wild waters. And this is being directly realized through the recent property of the Kawanapo. And this is a joint property that was the Wright Keithley property, and this is located in southwest of the upper arm. So it's along the Big Valley Wetlands Complex. And the Land Trust purchases properties and combined them to be known now as the Kawanapo Preserve. And Kawanapo means water lily people. And this was a settlement that was located at the delta of Manning Creek of Big Valley Pomo ancestors.
Okay.
And so the name Kawanapo is to give tribute to that settlement on the idea that we're going to restore that wetland that has been converted for ag land. There's some levees and dikes on that property, as pretty much mostly all the lands around the lake have been converted at some point. The idea is to then restore that property, that wetland, to pay tribute to the Kawanapo settlement, and hopefully restore some water lilies there, which there currently are not. So
what are some of the actual project activities going to look like? I mean, are you going to be raising levees? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So when you talk about a large restoration project, so the whole Kawanapo property is about 280 acres. And there are two kind of levee dike systems, one that's parallel to the lake, and the other one that's perpendicular along a man-made channel. And the idea is that we're going to put in some breaks within the levees to allow the wetland to kind of reform. Manning Creek, the mouth of Manning Creek, I called it hydromodified. And it's basically been straightened and hardened. So if you can envision a creek that's kind of meandering and flowing, much like a delta, maybe breaks off into several branches, you can envision how that would make a landscape look and feel like a wetland and have lots of, pools and little marshes and ponds and lots of area and habitat for maybe Clear Lake Hitch, as well as lots of vegetation. When this land was converted, all of that was kind of filled in, leveled, graded, filled in, and then they made a stream channel straightened and hardened. And so now the water that flows out of Manning Creek, with all of its nutrients and materials, is got a straight chute that goes straight out to the lake in one fast blip. Whereas previously, when it was a delta, there was lots of meander and curves and places for water to slow down, to settle, and to kind of filter out before it actually reached the lake. And it also provided a lot of really rich habitat for fish and wildlife. And that has all been removed. So the idea now, and we have, and when I say we again, mostly, Mary Jo Velasquez is the vice president of the board on the Lake County Land Trust, and she was really instrumental in writing that grant and getting that grant. So this is all on her. She's a great asset to the Land Trust. And we have a $1.2 million grant from Fish and Wildlife at the state. This is all state grants to do the planning for restoration that's of this size. It takes a lot of...
is it the Water Conservation Board that the grant comes through? Or is that...
No, these funds actually came from CDFW. So I believe they came from a fund that was allocated for hitch projects. So the tribes really pushed the state to look at the way they're managing hitch. And one of the things that came out of that push is an annual meeting called the Clear Lake Hitch Summit that the tribes and the state and other agencies put on. It's closed to the public, but... in those meetings, the director of CDFW dedicated funds specifically for Clear Lake Hitch projects, and that includes restoration projects. So whether it was these funds or these funds were part of another pocket of CDFW, they were approved and used because there is this dedicated, when the director of a state agency comes in and says, I want to fund projects for this, they're going to put money towards these projects. And so that's kind of where the funding came out for CDFW for these projects.
Right. So 1.2 million. That's
for planning. So there's not we still have to. It's going to hopefully set it all up so we can do the construction implementation. But when you have a large planning project like that, that's going to involve earth moving. Big Valley is a partner on that. So Big Valley Tribe is
Big Valley Tribe.
They're part of every single meeting, every plan design, because they are full partners on this project. And then we're working with a company called Flow West to do the engineering and the design.
All right.
They're experts.
Sounds like it does sound like a good partnership all the way around.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Mary Jo Velasquez. Step back just a little bit and let's talk about the board. Who's on the board of the Land Trust in here? The Lake County. I want to say the Lake County Land Trust. This is ours. Belongs here in Lake County.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I believe we have a 7-member board, and Mary Jo's vice president, and then Val Nixon is the president.
Val is the president.
Yes,
right.
And Val has been very involved and dedicated, and she goes out and works events, and it's just great,
and for those of you that don't know Val Nixon, she was a state. She was a state park ranger, right?
Yes, yeah. She's very intimate. I'm like, I have questions about what the state park does. Val is on it.
Yeah,
she's like, that's at the state park. It's like, yes, so glad we have Val there. And if you haven't been to the state park, it's very gorgeous right now. The water is high. There's lots of birds. You can see Clear Lake Hitch and the blackfish in the ponds or the old Coal Creek. Yeah, it's a glorious place to be right now this time of year.
Good. Well, that's probably a show that we could do sometime about that state park because it really is pretty spectacular. Yeah. Okay. So Val is the president. Vice president is Mary Jo Velasquez, and then who are your other board members? 7? Did you say 7?
I think there's 7. We're going to count them here. And this is a test for me. Thanks for the pop quiz. So Roberta Lyons is also on the board. Bernie Butcher, who used to own the Tallman or the Blue Wing Saloon. Lynn Bruner is on the board. Kate Hopper Smith of Middletown. She helps us with Rabbit Hill. I feel like I'm forgetting somebody. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I got Mary Jo and
Kate. Yeah, I wonder.
Oh, Eric Wolchuk too is also on our board. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah. So I wanted just to make mention that Bernie Butcher, I noticed, is a recent. He's a recent member added to the board, right? Yeah. I know the Butchers, they've been very supportive of the Land Trust, and we appreciate them a lot.
He's very active. Thank you, Bernie, for being so active. Good. Yep, he's part of our lands committee, really dedicated to learning why it is we go after certain properties. It's great to have an engaged board that asks questions, wants to be involved. Why are we doing what we're doing? And I'll have to say that it really helps me learn my job, right? So if I have to, they're my boss. Yeah. And they're the ones that make the decision on the direction the board goes. goes. I'm just the tool that makes it happen. But I also can, share my expertise and knowledge and why I think we should do certain things. And I really rely on their engagement to ask me, well, why are we doing that? Different than the county where, it's made up of tax dollars and we have requirements that are by law. You're kind of guided already, like, oh, I have to do these things because there's a law that says I have to do it. There's an ordinance. The land trust can direct their work based on what the board wants, what their priorities are, and our mission, our vision. And it's really up to, me to make that happen and explain why we do certain things. And so I am appreciative of the board for holding me accountable for that. And I think we're, stronger together as we go forward.
Good. Yeah, it's good to talk about the distinctions between government and, it's not a public entity. It is a private nonprofit, right?
Right, but we still do a lot of things with donor funds,
sure,
and state grants. So we still have to behold.
Yes.
Are we spending this money in a wise way, and are we doing it with the original intent of how that money was to be spent? So we still have accountability. And I really appreciate, again, the board and the staff, particularly Mary Jo and Val, reminding me, like, it's not county. You don't have to do it like that.
Yeah.
Like,
well, yeah, you are. Anytime grant monies are involved, grants always come with certain requirements, expectations, requirements. So you do have to manage those grants.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the job. You are the executive director now, and it is a full-time position now.
Yep.
So what's a day? It's not a day in the office.
Yeah.
What's a day on the land look like for you, Angela?
Well, everything is a little bit different every week, every day. Like yesterday, I did a presentation to the judges' breakfast in the city of Clear Lake with
I would have been there, but 7 a.m. in the morning. Hey, hats off to you.
They give you breakfast and coffee. That's the saving grace, right? They're like, if we're going to get you out this early, we better give you some coffee.
And for listeners, if you've never been to a judge's breakfast, anybody can go. And it's over in Clear Lake. It's very early in the morning, but they bring in speakers all the time, and you learn about things that you might not otherwise really ever learn about. But I used to go kind of regularly, and it's just getting harder and harder for me to get up that early.
It is early, I know.
You're young,
I have a 3-year-old, so it's like, I was like, my husband, you take care of the 3-year-old this day because I can't do anything else but just get out of bed and head over there.
Get there, right. Oh, well, congratulations
on
your 3-year-old then.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah, that's, yes, been there.
And then after that, I went and had a booth at the Shagome Days, which is Robinson Rancheria.
Oh, okay.
It's there. I think they're on their third or fourth annual. And they had
I bought a T-shirt.
Yeah, they have a bunch of booths, and there was partners there from agencies and other tribes, and just really appreciating the land that was in ancestral territory of Robinson, and bringing everybody together and learning what.
So the Land Trust actually had a booth.
We had a booth there next with partners from Redbud Audubon, and the Land Trust and Redbud Audubon, particularly Donna Makowitz and Roberta Lyons, are part of the organization. We partner a lot on things, so. Part of our mission for the Land Trust is providing education. And a few weeks ago, we worked an education event at Lakeside County Park where we had booths for 120 kindergarten students from Lakeport Elementary, showed them about the importance of different types of birds, aquatic plants with grebes, things like that, and then animal, the importance of wildlife and animal. They had some animal pelts they could feel, and that was a really fun experience. But we couldn't have done it without the partnership at Redbud Audubon. So really
nice.
Appreciative of other organizations, other nonprofits that are out there in the community that we can partner with, and we can create things that we couldn't do by ourselves.
Yeah. How much does the Land Trust? I know that they do nature walks and all that, but how much does the Land Trust actively participate in educational programs for young people? And kindergarten, it's pretty young, but it's a great age, and they are curious, and they love critters. Little kids, they love critters. So how much of that are you going to be able to do, or does the Land Trust sort of have that expectation for you to do?
Yeah, so I don't think it was something that the Land Trust focused on that much in the past, mostly for staffing capacity, but going into the future, we feel like it's very important to meet the education part of our mission. And also in this community, we have to showcase the lake and the land and why it's important and get people to care at all ages, right? And you can do that a lot easier.
Starting when
they're young, especially, we want people as they grow, maybe they leave Lake County, but they come back because they love it so much. And how do you instill that love and that passion at a young age, right? Why is Clear Lake and Lake County so cool and unique? Yeah. And you can do that through the education.
Yeah, this place that they live in is very special. And so your plans then are to continue that part of the mission and maybe to enhance it. Is that accurate?
I hope so,
say?
Yeah.
Okay.
In ideal world, I am writing a couple grants that have some specific education and stewardship line items in them, and looking to get maybe some part-time staff or interns that can help develop some of that curriculum program, particularly when we're looking at ages between kindergarten and third grade. Kindergartners is we learned a lot from that experience, and we're glad to use that information going forward.
Especially 120. We're midway into the show. Good morning, everyone. You're listening to Voices of Lake County. I'm your host, Olga Martin-Steele. I have as my special guest today, Angela DePalma-Dow, who is the Executive Director for the Lake County Land Trust. If you are listening on Friday the 13th, you're listening to a live broadcast. If you're listening any other day, you are listening to a replay of this show. I'm going to open up the phone lines now for those of you who may want to call in with a question for Angela. So I sometimes do shows where I take calls and sometimes I don't. So just as a reminder, keep your comments very brief, keep them on subject, be polite, and we'll have a good time. I've got two phone lines open, so 263-3435, 707, 263-3435, and a final reminder that the opinions expressed on this show or any Lake County Community Radio Incorporated show are the opinions of the speaker alone, and do not necessarily represent Lake County Community Radio. So with that disclosure and announcement, I'll go ahead and open up the phone lines now for calls. Angela is ready for you for your questions. Okay. We talked about education. Talk about some of the other projects that the Land Trust is doing now.
Yes, so we're in constant state of looking for properties that would serve our conservation plan. So right now we are particularly prioritizing tributaries, wetlands, shorelines along Clear Lake that provide Clear Lake hitch habitat. So there's a couple properties that we're looking at, one on Coal Creek, one up in the Rodman area, working with private property owners, getting the state to do site visits to get their opinion on, these properties for meeting Clear Lake hitch habitat, meeting with tribal partners, the county hitch staff too. So that's the process, trying to figure out, do these properties meet a restoration or conservation need for Clear Lake hitch, and can we pursue them and purchase them? And then,
so you're being very strategic then about the types of lands that you're looking to purchase, or perhaps donated, perhaps left in trusts, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that is absolutely correct, because we do have a limited staff. I'm the only full-time staff person, and we have 2 part-time staff, but we have very dedicated board and volunteers. But it is, every time you pursue a property, the steps to get, it surveyed or appraised or lot line, all the steps to actually, what it's like to buy a house, right?
Yes.
And that's very structured. So all of that can take time, and it takes a lot of effort. And we usually have to go and get state grants to do the acquisition purchase, which is another process. Yeah. So, but it's worth it when you can get properties like Keithley and Wright and then the Kawanapo Preserve. I mean, that is a huge... Forever, those properties are going to be now conserved and protected, and that's going to benefit, not just our generation.
Oh, but sure, future generations.
Yeah, so it's worth it. But we do have to be strategic. So there's some lands that are gorgeous that we would love, but maybe they're on a hill. Maybe there's wildflowers. Maybe they're gorgeous, but we just can't.
What can you actually affect on the land that you're acquiring? Right. We do have a phone call and waiting, so let's take the first call. You're live on air. Thank you for calling.
Hello, this is Donna Makowitz, and I just wanted to say what a great program, and the Land Trust is so lucky, the whole county's lucky that we've got Angela on board, and it's kind of sad for Water Resources to have her lead, but we're so proud to have her. And I just wanted to know if she could touch a little bit on land tending days. What's it all about, and is it for families or just certain age, and what all it entails? And I'll take my answer off the air. Thank you.
Thanks for the call, Donna. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Donna. She's amazing.
She is. Yeah.
She asked about land tending. And so the land trust, we have these properties, and we talked earlier about having them open for education and walks. And then we have a batch of volunteers. And one of the things that the Land Trust does with these volunteers is land tending. So, for example, there's a land tending day on Sunday, the 29th, up at Rodman Preserve. And if you haven't been to the Rodman Preserve, it's gorgeous. There's a wetland up there. There's oak savanna, oak woodlands. There's prairies. There's vernal pools. There's wildlife, birds, and wildlife. And we utilize volunteers on these properties to do, path clearing or invasive plant management, plantings. We have interpretive garden out there, or starting one. There's some Scotch broom we have a dedicated volunteer that's really kept the Scotch broom up there, kind of
contained,
isolated. Yeah, but needs a little help.
It's an invasive species.
It's very invasive. It's flammable. And so we really rely on the volunteers to participate in these land tendings to kind of help protect the properties that we have, that we manage.
So you're looking for volunteers.
We're looking for volunteers. The land tending days, especially now in summer, they usually start about 9 o'clock. They're not going to go past 11 or 12 now that it's so hot. Sometimes snacks or lunch are provided. So at Rodman, we'll do drinks and snacks. We have a covered patio under an oak tree. And so people can do a couple of hours of land tending, and then we can, relax. We also provide guided walks, so no work involved at this point, but educational, exploratory guided walks. So there's one this Saturday, tomorrow at 9 o'clock at the Quantipo property. And so we have a newly cleared shaded levee trail that actually shows one of the breaks in the levee that is allowing water from the lake into the wetlands. It's a great place to bring binoculars. The waterfowl out there, there's a whole population of pelicans right now that's hanging out in the wetland on the property.
Yes.
And then we're going to talk about our restoration project. So I'll be out there with Mary Jo. It's 446 Soda Bay Road in Lakeport. And we'll have a flag there because the driveway is kind of hidden. But that's tomorrow, June 14th at 9 a.m. We do these guided walks once a month throughout the season. So if you miss this one tomorrow, we'll have another one in July and August.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, and we will be doing volunteer days out at Quantipo coming up. Particularly, we might need help from volunteers to do plant mapping. So people can come out with their mobile phones. We can show them, how to map some of the plants that we want to manage. It's a great opportunity for volunteers to do something, but also to learn something about
what you do. We do have another caller waiting, so let me just take this call. You're live on air. Thanks for your call.
Good morning, Olga.
Good morning.
Dennis here.
Hi, Dennis.
Yeah, question I have, there are some places in Lake County where the road crosses a creek, and thinking of like Adobe Creek in one, that are totally blocking off the flow of the the natural run of the creek. So I'm just wondering, do you take on projects like that where maybe there was like bad construction, is how I see it, of how they put in the pre-crossing. So do you guys do things like that?
All right.
So I have two answers for that. Thank you for the call. That's a great question. So the Land Trust itself is not a regulatory agency. So we would do a project like that if we purchased a property that had a road on it that needed to be restored or reconfigured in order to allow flow.
So you don't work with the county on some of these things?
Right. So that was the first answer. The second answer is the county or the Watershed Protection District, which manages both the county road or the Adobe Reservoir, which is upstream of Bell Hill Road on Adobe, actually has a grant right now for about, maybe $500,000. They have it through the Wildlife Conservation Board. Their task 4 is it task 3? Maybe it's task 3. It's task 3 is to actually do a redesign of that crossing. So if anyone goes out to Bell Hill Road on Adobe Creek, you'll see it's basically a cement. It's a huge cement wall with culverts.
It's where Bell Hill Road crosses Adobe Creek.
Correct. So the county has a grant. I actually helped them get that grant when I worked there for the district. And they have a grant, and they have a company that's all lined up to do the redesign of that. And they are proposing to do a kind of a bridge that has a never-ending bottom, or a so basically it's more of like a bridge type crossing, or a bottomless culvert kind of crossing to allow flow to move under that, prevent the flooding. That road always floods. It's like low. And then also to allow the hitch both to migrate up the stream and then migrate down, and also to allow flow for the juveniles. So
but that's at the county level.
The county level has that. But I helped get that grant, and they have it. So you should ask the county how that grant is doing.
There you go.
Because they have that money, and the state wants them to do that project. And it's all, that road is public works. So there's nothing stopping them from doing that work.
Now, Angela, not to put you on the spot or anything, but you may know who's in charge over at Water Resources now at the county?
So they have a director. His name is Pawan Upadhyay, and he's been there since last July. And then their hitch staff that they have over there, which are great. And they have 2 positions. There's a coordinator, which is Chris Childers. He used to be at Robinson, and then Taylor Woodruff is their technician. And they're great staff over there, and the positions, those 2 positions were dedicated from the Board of Supervisors in 2023. So the Board of Supervisors created 2 new positions specifically to manage and observe and do hitch programs, where the other positions in Water Resources are not dedicated positions.
So they have dedicated funds for these projects. So Dennis, there you go. There's your contact. All right. Yeah. Thanks for the call, Dennis. Appreciate it. Good hearing from you. Bye-bye.
The Land Trust is always available for, consult or anything like that. We do serve on several county committees where we provide expertise, and, especially if we have properties in areas that these committees impact,
Well, the thing is, I'll just say this is a kind of a personal comment or personal commentary, and that is when you have people that understand government and how government works, they can be a real asset in terms of providing information and education to the public who may not, necessarily understand. It's private versus public. It's a different world. Yeah. And yet state laws are state laws regardless of pretty much who you work for. Right. So it's kind of to me, it's been very beneficial when you have people that can do crossover like that. So so thank you for that and for taking that question.
Yeah, that was fun.
So for those of you, again, just tuning in, if you're listening today, June 13, 2 Voices of Lake County, you're listening to with Angela DePalma-Dow, you're listening to a live broadcast. If you're listening any other day, it is a replay. I do plan to replay this show, so watch for the replay. And the other thing I want to mention is that the phone lines are open, and the number to call, 263-3435, 263-3435. And, of course, you can always text me on my shows. You can text me anytime, 916-849-8170, 916-849-8170. Okay, so those are some great calls and great opportunities to get some information out there. One of the things, actually, I got a text question, and it's a good one, I think. Rodman Slough, you mentioned Rodman Slough, and you mentioned the nature walks. Now, can anybody go on Rodman Slough and do self-guided tours? Does it always have to be a volunteer-guided tour? How does all that work?
Yeah, so there's Rodman Slough, which is Rodman Slough Park. So that's a county park that's always open. That's a county park that's right there by the bridge over Rodman Slough on the Nice Lucerne Cutoff. Rodman Preserve is on the corner of Westlake and the Nice Lucerne Cutoff, and that is the preserve that the Land Trust owns. We are open for self-guided tours or self-guided walks on Saturdays from 12 to 2. And if you want information on that, that was just shared through the Visit Lake County. They just shared that information online. You can also visit our website at lakecountylandtrust.org. And then, I am out there Monday through Friday, depending on field stuff and site visits. But if somebody wanted to come out during the weekend or during the week and the gate's open, then it's open to the public to come out. You could also call us. So our phone number is 707-262-0707. And you can call us and just say, hey, is someone out there? I want to do a walk. We don't allow dogs, unfortunately, because it is a nature area. We don't have anything set up, for the doggy bags and stuff like that. But there's two kind of pathways, and one's about a mile or so, and the other one's only, I don't know, an eighth of a mile, and they're very easy. They're not hard hikes at all. And there's benches set up with views. You can take a picnic out there. And
are there interpretive stations? I mean, places where
there's signage that identifies some of the plants. Okay. Like little plaques. We are working on some interpretive signage, particularly for the Kuanapo property. And then we're trying to look more to do, look at our resources and apply for grants to do more interpretive signage throughout Rodman Preserve and other properties that the Land Trust manages. And something personal I want to do as we go forward is when we do signage, have both Spanish and English, and as well as highlight tribal cultural, aspects of the landscape. Whether these plants, how you pronounce them in Pomo, what role do they serve, how they're important for culture, how are they used, those kinds of things. So,
good.
That is all something that we're looking forward to putting in place.
Future projects, right?
Future projects, yes. But yeah, if anybody wants to come out to Rodman Preserve, I feel like a lot of people in the community haven't been out there, and so I would. Well,
I noticed that. I don't see as many people. I see a lot of people kayaking out of there, and we do that sometimes. Yeah. But I don't see a lot of people walking the area, which why this text question was, I think, particularly important because it's not that far from Lakeport. In fact, it's kind of pretty centrally located for Nice, for Lucerne, for Lakeport area.
Yeah, it's a minute away from the hospital. And if you look on Google, the trail is actually on Google. So you can see how long the trail is, the elevation. So it's actually, you can do the Google Maps and look at that. And we actually have a nature preserve also. So the building there has a lot of, we have a microscope so you can look at critters. So if you have kids, sometimes we have kids and, their grandparents or parents stop by and they look at the nature center. So there's a bunch of stuff up there that I think is not
Do you have hours for the nature center? Do you have
They're the same as Rodman Preserve. Same. So yeah. And again, if you want to come during the week, you can call us first, make sure someone's there. You can stop by, and if the gate's closed or no one's there, come back later. But yeah.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Very good. One question that I had is just a small one for you. Do you have an office, or do you pretty much work from home? Do you just? I can see that you're going to be out in nature a lot on the lands that you're working on. So, I'm sure it's an outdoor program. Where's your operating base?
Yeah, my office is at the preserve.
It is at the preserve.
Yeah, which is great. I am not a work from home person. Yeah, working from home for me is really hard. Yeah. So I really like having, leaving in the morning, getting to the preserve, working in the office, doing stuff on the computer. People stop by, staff are there, part of the time. People call, email, and I can do all that kind of away from home.
Okay, so that's kind of the that's the office, per se.
Yeah. For now, yes.
All right. Okay. All right. So you're going to be easy to get a hold of.
Yeah. Call the phone number. If I'm there, I answer the phone. And you can also email us at Lake County or LCLT at lakecountylandtrust.org. So yeah.
All right. Good. Very good.
Very accessible.
Yeah, I'll say. Well, and as I said, it's on this side of the lake, close to Lakeport and all the surrounding areas. So, did you want to touch on anything else? Because if not, I wanted you to go to Middletown and talk about what you're doing over there. Land Trust is all over. So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So in Middletown, there's a property called Rabbit Hill, which I believe is a donation. And there's a water tower there. So the water basket.
Those are so cool now.
Yeah. So the Land Trust only has one. We have a small one, but Middletown Art Center and Middletown Rancheria did the other ones, which are
beautiful.
bigger and glorious. They're glorious. It's beautiful to look up at the hill and see that.
It totally is.
And we do have walks on Rabbit Hill. You know, it gets pretty hot and dusty up there. So I think during the summer, I'm not sure what the walk schedule will be. But it's a great place to go and get in the view and look at the water tower. So.
You've got a board member from that area, right?
Yes, Kate Haber-Schmidt. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and she is on the stewardship committee for that, or the stewardship committee for that property, and we're really thankful for her for being engaged and helping steward that property with partners. Okay. I need to get down there more often. It's really hard when you live up in north part of county. Getting down there, I need to do that. That's my own. That
big beautiful lake right in the middle.
I know.
That we can't jet across yet. So anyhow, I wanted to have you speak to all the different properties that the Land Trust is really involved in and engaged in. And I know people know about Rabbit Hill. It's a fairly commonly, I think, known that the Land Trust has that holding. But
and on the way down to Middletown, you could stop at another property that's basically kind of co-managed, partnered with the Nature Conservancy, which is Boggs Lake. So that's on Harrington Road in Cobb. And that is a very cool property because it's, up in the mountain. It's on a vernal pool. The water is full right now. There's a small parking lot. So we usually, if we do events there, they're kind of smaller just because there's not a lot of space. But there's a little trail there, and then you could actually walk around the whole lake, and it's pretty flat.
Yeah, no, I've been there, but it was actually a guided. It was kind of like an event and a guided walk. But people can take that walk on their own, right?
Yeah, and there's a kiosk there with information, of what you'll see in the trail, and we don't have any guided walks scheduled. We have a trail tending day out there, and that's on the Saturday the 28th. And we have a small group that's going out there. If anybody lives there and wants to stop by, certainly welcome. I'm not actively advertising a whole lot just because the space there. The parking lot has just been kind of refurbished, so it's a little more accessible. And again, we partner with Nature Conservancy out there. That's just a gorgeous, beautiful place.
It is, and for those of you that don't know what a vernal pool is, you can go out and find all.
It's the Mac Daddy of all vernal pools.
We do have another caller waiting, so let's take this call. Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning. Thank you for calling.
I was at Boggs Lake, I'd say 2019, about 6 years ago. And it was getting dusk, and I just went over rattlesnake den.
Oh, rattlesnakes.
Oh.
And they warned me. I heard little ones and big ones, and just saying, if you're going out there, bring a big stick.
Yeah.
Don't just let your dogs run around free, because they will get it.
Good warning. Good heads up.
Yeah, it's you don't send people out there without some kind of safety warning. A rattlesnake.
Let me ask Angela a quick question on this. Thank you for that heads up. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Then thank you for calling. So talk about that. Is there signage out there for rattlesnakes?
I believe there is signage. I haven't been there in a while, so I'm not going to, guarantee it.
I actually don't remember
usually,
when I was there.
Yeah, I mean, this is when we protect wildlands, right? That's the return of nature. When you're protecting nature, you're going to have nature come back, and rattlesnakes are an essential part.
They're part of
that nature.
Yeah.
I'm really glad the caller was safe, and nothing happened to her dog. And keeping your dog on a leash is also helpful, keeping them on the trail, not letting them run around.
Yeah.
And that is why we do events like this trail tending. So if we clear a trail and people use the trail, you're less likely to have those kind of wildlife interactions versus going off trail into the shrubbery. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's some signage out there.
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm trying to remember.
I will check.
Yeah,
with our group.
I'm
I'm pretty sure though.
I don't worry too much about. Well, I live in rattlesnake country, so
Yeah.
you kind of, it goes with the territory. But when the public is involved, yeah, it's important to be sure everybody's safe. So, Angela, you're not going to believe this. We got about 2.5 minutes.
Time went
to
by,
wind
man.
this by.
That was fun.
I do want to thank you for coming. I want to thank the listeners for the great calls. And I will be replaying this program for those of you that want to stay up with when I do what. I have a Facebook page called Voices of Lake County, and you can I post there my shows, and you can also just find me just do the search and do Olga Martin Steele, and you can find out about my shows and when I replay. So probably going to replay you next week, but I haven't
You'll let
finished
us
my
know.
schedule yet.
Okay.
So yeah. But yeah, I want to thank you for coming and give you a minute and a half to wrap it up.
Thanks so much for having me. I love being on the radio and talk to the community. Thanks to all the callers and supporters and everyone that keeps KPFC going, because the community radio and the outreach you guys provide is so important and essential. And if anybody has any questions about the land trust, or you want to get involved, maybe you want to donate some land or donate some financial contribution, or you just want to get out and volunteer, you can come visit us at lakecountylandtrust.org. Spell it all out. You can call us at 707-262-0707. And you can always, send me an email if you have any questions. And then I will hopefully see some of you this Saturday at 9 a.m. at the Kawanapo Wetland Preserve at 446 Soda Bay Road in Lakeport. We're doing a guided walk. And if not, we'll see you at the Rodman Preserve Land Tending Day on Sunday the 29th out there.
Okay.
Westlake and the Nice Lucerne Cutoff. Thank you so much, Olga.
Thank you. And caller, okay. I was just going to say, caller, I'm sorry, but we are out of time. We're out of time
Popular
to take
today.
any more calls. But I love it that people are interested and they're listening and they're communicating. So that's an awesome deal. Well, we'll have you back because you'll be replayed, and I'll have you back down the road as Land Trust continues the great work and hopefully is continued to be funded.